Good afternoon. Before I begin taking questions, I'd like to share a few words on the actions that were taken during today's City Council session, which stand as our latest step in our journey towards good governance and citywide inclusive growth. First, following months of collaboration and partnership with advocacy groups, community leaders, and elected officials, the City Council today passed the Woodlawn Housing Ordinance. This is an innovative and comprehensive measure that will, among other things, protect existing Woodlawn residents from displacement, as well as expand home ownership opportunities and ensure inclusive growth for this historic neighborhood. This ordinance also represents the culmination of an effort that began last summer when we initiated a robust series of community engagement meetings to create a real two-way dialogue around community priorities related to the creation of the Obama Presidential Center. I want to give a special thanks to Alderman Hairston and Alderman Jeanette Taylor. Both were fierce advocates for their communities, making sure that long-term residents were heard, respected, and supported. Thanks also goes to Commissioner Maurice Cox of Planning and his team, as well as Commissioner Marissa Navarro of Housing and her team. Both departments led and participated in a significant process of community engagement, and the fruits of those labors are reflected in this historic ordinance. Thanks to those efforts, this ordinance, along with others we've undertaken, will ensure that not only the Woodlawn community members, but other Chicago residents will be able to fully benefit from the incredible opportunities created by the future Obama Presidential Center, and we are very excited to break ground on that center as soon as possible. Meanwhile, we also made a hugely important step in keeping our residents, particularly our young people, healthy with the City Council's vote to ban the sale of flavored vaping products in Chicago, helping keep them from using these products and developing life-threatening habits. And I want to be clear, because there was some discussion about this among City Council. With flavors like candy and chocolate and other names and flavors that are clearly targeted towards children and young people, these products, no doubt about it, are designed to get our young people hooked. The tobacco industry is looking for its next generation of people who are addicted to nicotine, and we as a city have a responsibility to do everything that we can to keep that from happening. Likewise, I'm proud to report that we also committed ourselves to further action on vaping and tobacco. So look for more on that in future days. And separately, though appropriately in the days following Labor Day, the City Council also approved the collective bargaining agreements for the Chicago Firefighters Union Local 2 and the Public Safety Employees Union Unit 2. It's a little confusing. Firefighters Local 2 and Public Safety Employees Unit 2. Placing our public safety personnel on solid ground as they put their lives on the line, serving our residents and communities. Now, this takes care of two important union contracts that were unfinished at the start of this administration. I want to also thank all involved, and particularly our friends in the respective unions, especially Jim Tracy, the president of the Firefighters Local Union 2, and the union heads of IBEW, Public Safety Union Unit 2. I also want to thank our outside counsel and mayoral staff who all worked tirelessly to get these deals done. And also thanks to Chairwoman Sue Sadlowski Garza for her steady leadership in bringing these two issues before her committee and getting them approved today in City Council. In addition to these passages, we also introduced several important measures that will support the health and safety of our residents. These include the introduction of a clean air ordinance, which will restrict where air polluting businesses can build new facilities in the city of Chicago. This was developed in collaboration with elected officials, industry groups, environmental advocates, and the changes proposed by this ordinance will impose new independent land use review over opening or expanding of facilities such as incinerators or factories, while also ensuring that any new industrial development isn't slowed across all of our 77 neighborhoods. Importantly, this ordinance also gives residents a meaningful voice and the placement of manufacturing sites in their neighborhoods. At its core, this ordinance is about environmental equity and justice. Now, we will never truly establish an economy that works for all Chicagoans if some polluting industries unfairly burden certain neighborhoods with a false choice of jobs or dirty air. I also want to especially thank Alderman George Cardenas, Alderwoman Susan Sadlowski Garza, and Alderman Mike Rodriguez for their efforts on this important issue. Now I'm happy to take your questions.
Mayor, when it comes to vaping, there have been some that have written about it saying that it was watered down, what the ordinance that was passed today. If this is so important, why not ban flavored cigarettes? Why not take it further?
Well, as I said, we intend to keep pushing on this issue. This is very personal to me, as I remarked during City Council. My father started smoking cigarettes when he was about 13 years old, and he smoked up until about the last year of his life, and he only stopped because he was heavily addicted. He only stopped when he literally couldn't get oxygen and had to go on supplementary oxygen. Watching a loved one who has been a victim of nicotine addiction and the terrible things that smoking does to your body, to your upper respiratory systems, to your heart, and seeing him die slowly over the course of a very long year. I will never forget that, and I am determined to make sure that we do everything we can to educate our folks about the perils of smoking, but we have to do something to stop the spread of vaping among our young people. As remarked by many on the City Council floor today, and I've got to commend Alderman O'Shea for his really tireless leadership on this issue to make sure that we were able to take some steps today. What's important is that we do take some action. There's no question whatsoever that young people are suffering. In my daughter's school, we've heard reports of kids as young as the 5th grade using vaping. This is a significant problem, and while we obviously made some compromises to get this over the finish line, we're not stopping.
All right, there were several questions, as you can imagine, about Attorney General William Barr's visit to Chicago.
Yes.
I can't. There's 5 or 6 reporters who have sent these in to me. One of them, from Tanya Francisco from WGN, says, "Can you please react to Attorney General Barr's comments that Operation Legend is taking credit for the reduction in the murder rate here in Chicago?"
Yeah, I saw that, and it's just factually inaccurate. And unfortunately, this federal administration and Attorney General Barr are kind of facts optional, but let me put some facts in to get this into context. We started to see a downward trend in shootings and homicides really beginning in late July. The first additional federal agents that came to Chicago as part of Operation Legend didn't even get here until August 3rd. And those were a trickle over the course of the month. And I'm not even certain that we've gotten the full complement of officers that were promised, because I think some were sent to other parts of the country. Now, to be clear, we value our partnership with federal agents that have been in this jurisdiction literally for decades. FBI, ATF, DEA, the U.S. Marshals. We work, meaning the police department works hand in glove with them on a number of different issues, and those additional resources have definitely made an impact on long-standing investigations, and we've seen an uptick in federal prosecutions. And while I'm at it, let me also give thanks to John Lausch, the U.S. Attorney. So the partnership is important and it is strong, but nobody should be taking a victory lap. Really, I think that does disservice to the many victims of violent crime, and particularly gun violence in our city. We are absolutely making progress. We're absolutely leaning into those federal relationships, but the cause and effect that Attorney General Barr tried to make today, I think the facts just don't bear that out, not yet. I'm hopeful that these relationships and these additional resources will really bear fruit, but we're still in the early stages. We're essentially a month into them being here on the ground, and that's not enough time for them to have had significant impact yet.
You don't believe that it is proof that the police department needs more resources to help in the reduction of crime?
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, as I understand the readout from Attorney General Barr, he was essentially crediting Operation Legend for the reduction in the homicide rate. What I'm saying to you is we started to see that reduction even before the federal resources were even here in Chicago. Now, again, we're grateful for those additional resources, and we don't need to relitigate the line that I've drawn over what is acceptable and what's not. But I don't think it's accurate to say that there's a direct cause and effect between the reduction in the murder rate. There's a number of different strategies that the superintendent and his leadership team put into place in July that I believe have had more impact. The data that I've seen on the number of arrests in those areas that those additional resources, whether it's on the west side or the south side that have been in, there's been a dramatic reduction in violent crime. That, I think, is what is really the impetus. But we are absolutely grateful for the additional federal charges and prosecutions that these additional resources are, I think, are precipitating.
Attorney General Barr noted when asked where were the city officials standing with him today, he said they were invited but felt that it was politics that kept them from being there.
No, it was politics that made us decide not to be there. We're never going to be used as a prop. Never. As you are well aware, unfortunately, and it's disappointing, that the president and members of the White House staff, particularly the communications director, continue to badmouth Chicago, making misleading and outright false statements about what's happening on the ground here. I hope that in the time that the Attorney General has spent visiting different locations in Chicago, seeing firsthand the, I think, remarkable work that our police department is doing, and in some instances in partnership with the federal agencies that are here in Chicago, that he will be better informed about what the actual realities are here in Chicago. I've given him a letter that I hope he will take to heart. And emphasizing the kind of things that I think that the federal government is uniquely qualified to do. But we're not going to stand up at a press conference and be used as a prop by anybody, not in this climate, and particularly, unfortunately, not in a way that the Department of Justice, under Attorney General Barr, has been used in effect as an adjunct of the Trump reelection campaign. We're not going to do that.
At the same time, what signal does that send if the city needs resources and assistance, and then you're reluctant to stand with the Attorney General when he visits the city that they've sent resources to?
Well, I think about what would have happened if we were standing there today and the Attorney General Barr is doing a victory lap around Operation Legend. What message would that have sent when our police department knows very differently of what the circumstances on the ground are? So we're not going to be used in that kind of orchestrated presentation to mislead the public about what the realities are. The Attorney General spent a significant amount of time today looking at resources that we are using in our fight against gun violence. He visited a district on the south side. He saw our SDSC rooms, our ATC rooms. So he got a lot of information about Chicago and about the Chicago Police Department without the glare of the cameras, so we could have actually a meaningful, not orchestrated conversation. And that conversation, as I understand it, continues. There's a roundtable that's going on, I think, as we speak, and there'll be other opportunities for him to learn about the police department. That's where meaningful engagement actually happens, not a show press conference. And so we felt that it made sense for us to participate, and we did, to make sure that he saw what the resources are and how we're fighting crime here in Chicago. As I said, we continue to lean into important federal relationships. That is the message that we want to send, not some orchestrated campaign that can be used then by President Trump as part of his reelection effort.
And so you personally have not taken part in any of the Barr visit?
No, other than sending him a letter.
That was sent some time ago.
No.
Oh, a new one.
Today.
Today. And what about that letter?
I reemphasize the things that I thought that, and we're happy to share it with you, but I reemphasize the things that I believe that the federal government is uniquely qualified to do, and then narrowed it to the things in particular that the Department of Justice could do. Things like common sense gun background checks, limiting assault weapons, really getting serious about interstate trafficking of guns, given that in the last report in 2019, the guns that we were able to trace, over 55% came from other states. That points to the need to have a federal eye on gun trafficking that ends up here in Chicago, and then providing the ATF with more resources to really perform one of its core responsibilities, which is oversight of federally licensed gun dealers. So we wanted to call those things to his attention. They're not new issues, but they need to be addressed.
But is a letter as effective as face-to-face?
Well, I wasn't invited to see him face-to-face.
You were not invited to be at the press conference, though.
No,
they would have given you an opportunity.
No, the police department was invited to be at the press conference. To be clear.
But you were not. You personally were not involved in invited to any of the bar agenda today.
That's correct.
On to the new book by Bob Woodward. What do you think of the book that Bob Woodward is saying that in February, and he has tapes, that the president knew the coronavirus was deadly but played it down?
Well, I'm just learning about this as the news is breaking today, and obviously I've not seen a copy of the book or listened to any of the tapes. If what is reported is true, it's profoundly, profoundly disappointing, and really worse than that. If the president had information, and as he should have, and as we all learned later, about the deadly impact of this virus, and if he chose instead to downplay the significance of the virus for whatever ill-intended purpose, lives were lost. And that's pretty sobering to think about. There's no question that the level of devastation that we have seen across the country, here in Chicago, in Illinois, but really across the country. The number of lives that have been lost, the number of efforts that had to be made by localities because we didn't have the leadership and support of the federal government in responding to what I hope is a once-in-a-lifetime global pandemic. If the president knew all of that information early on and could have done something differently, to me, that is all I need to hear about why he should not get a second term.
There are also those saying today that why would Bob Woodward hold that information if he learned that in February and we're hearing it in September?
Yeah, Bob Woodward's a very interesting guy, as you know. He's obviously been heralded as a great reporter, but you'll recall that there were also things that he knew regarding, I believe it was, I'm trying to think of what it was, late in the Bush term. He'll have to answer those questions. Obviously, all of us have to live with our conscience. This would have been something that I think would have been important for the public to learn, particularly since seems like he had actual audio tapes, and to reveal it now 6+ months into a worldwide and a United States fight against this horrible, horrible virus that's devastated so many, to hold that, I think he's going to have to answer for that.
We got time for 2 more.
Okay, from Greg Pratt from the Tribune. How long was your interview with the Inspector General's office? What did they ask you? And did the IG raise any issues with how you or your administration handled anything about the Johnson situation?
No, I mean, much ado about nothing, as Mr. Pratt should know by now. It was a very cursory, meaning short, interview. I can't recall how long it lasted, but it wasn't an hour and a half as he's reported. It was very factual. And as I indicated last fall, I expected to be a witness in the IG's investigation, given that I had direct contact with Superintendent Johnson, where he told me facts about the night that he was out that, as we now know, just simply were not true. So This wasn't about me or my administration. It was solely about the actions of Superintendent Johnson.
We've, oh gosh, there's several, but can I do this one on,
We'll give you more time.
We've received complaints, this is from the Telemundo, they've received complaints from CTA riders and drivers about the lack of mask and social distancing and the enforcement on the buses and the trains. Does the city plan to do anything about this problem that affects public transportation?
Well, we have been working, and the CTA, I'll say, has been working really diligently with members of the public, other transportation stakeholders, and of course with the unions representing bus drivers and rail car folks to make sure that the CTA was safe. And we'll continue to do that. Keep in mind that the CTA was the only major public transit system in the country that continued to operate at full levels even throughout COVID, because we knew that essential workers were depending upon public transportation to get to and from work. If there are issues, I have great confidence in President Carter and his team. We take safety of all kinds, particularly during this public health crisis. We take it very, very seriously. And if there are specific issues, I'm confident that President Carter and his team will address them.
Police misconduct settlements. How much are those settlements impacting the city's budget? And why don't they seem to influence police misconduct?
Well, I'm not sure that that's true. Obviously, by the time a case gets to a settlement, the underlying conduct is probably years old, and I don't have the details on every single one of those, the 4 that were approved today at my fingertips, but we absolutely do take these seriously. Part of the reason why I hired and empowered a chief risk officer to address settlements, judgments, and attorney's fees. She has been extremely active in making sure that every single time one of these lawsuits comes in, that we are asking critical questions that need to be asked. Why did this happen? What are the underlying allegations? Who are the officers involved? Is this an issue regarding supervision? Is it an issue regarding training? Is there something unique to the particular unit involved? We're asking the kind of questions that candidly should have been asked for years, but we've been asking them from day one of this administration, and we're using the information that's gained from that process to make sure that we are addressing any new changes in protocols and policies and training. So we are taking this very, very seriously, but it will take some time before we see the kind of market decrease in these cases that I would like to see. We are an outlier. I've said this many times in other jurisdictions across the country, which is precisely why this administration has gotten very serious about making sure that we address any allegations of misconduct.
In LA County, they have already said they will not have trick-or-treating on Halloween. Have you looked ahead and had any discussions? What might be happening here in Chicago? What can parents expect?
We are looking ahead, and we've really been looking ahead at Halloween for quite some time. I'm not prepared today to kind of roll out what the ultimate decision will be, because we're still engaging with stakeholders. But obviously, this is a very different time, and I don't expect to see mass crowds of trick-or-treating like we have in years past. It's not safe for the children. It's not safe for the adults. So we are working on plans to recognize and celebrate Halloween, which I know is an important moment for many, including the kids in my neighborhood. But we're going to do it in a way that is consistent with the public health guidance.
Finally, Amy Jacobson is asking, on Labor Day, you were seen at a public event wearing a mask that said "Good Trouble." What message were you trying to send?
Well, I was given that mask. Obviously, that's something that has been talked about a lot with the passing of a real giant, John Lewis, and I was wearing that really in honor of his life and legacy. And for me, what that means is making sure that we continue to press the case for equity and inclusion, and that we continue fighting against institutional racism. I think we owe at least that much to John Lewis for the sacrifices that he made over the course of his life.
Thank you.
Thank you.